Hey there, it's One Boom, and welcome to the top 10 things I look for within first-person shooters. Hope you guys enjoy. I'm going to get right into number 1. Number 1, customization. Now let me explain why customization is number 1. These aren't really in any particular order, but the reason I pick customization as the thing to start this list off is because of a little known fact about the identification part of our brain. When watching a movie or talking to a loved one, our brains are always trying to identify with them and trying to relate to them. We're all a little bit narcissistic at heart, and we're all trying to make sure we fit into that person's shoes just as well as they could fit into ours. That's why the Walking Dead TV show is so popular, I think, because it puts characters in such peril that us ourselves watching it go, how would I get out of that situation? And why did you have that thought? Well, because your brain had that thought. Your brain's constantly processing, what would I do if I was being chased by zombies? What would I do if I had to kill a family member because they turn into a zombie? It's depressing stuff, and our brain doesn't like to deal with it, so our brain pre-processes that kind of thing. Anyway, when you're playing a first-person shooter, that level of identification goes up by hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of percentages. That's not real. That's not a statistic, but I'm just saying, it's way higher than when playing any other video game or watching any other movie. When you're playing a first-person shooter, your brain does not separate reality from the fiction. So, the fantasy world that you're playing in when you're playing Call of Duty or Battlefield, your brain does not realize the difference. So, customization. Customization basically tickles that part of your brain. It likes that. Why do you think Halo is so popular? Halo literally thrusts you into a suit of armor, and the heads-up display is all curved as if you're behind a visor. You're a male or a female in armor of your choosing. If that doesn't help with the identification part of your brain, I don't know what else would. There's no prominent features, there's no wrong sized nose or the wrong colored eyes. You are just you inside a suit of armor. So in conclusion, I like customization in first-person shooters because I can then identify with myself as a character, as a soldier, and I think that's really awesome. And if you don't like that, that's fine, but I don't think anybody's upset when customization is prominent. Number 2, a good progression system. Every first-person shooter needs a decent progression system that showers players in riches and finds a decent middle ground between taking way too long and being way too hard, or not taking long enough and being way too easy. Either way, it should be a consistently rewarding experience that makes players come back day in and day out to make sure they get to the max rank. If the rank is literally just a set of numbers that gets increasingly bigger sitting next to your username, I will become bored, and you can surely bet your ass that I won't play that game for very much longer. I guess maybe I'm just a completionist, or maybe I just like to watch myself progress through a game. I don't know. I'm used to video games rewarding you for your time played, not making you hope that you get something cool. And that leads me to number 3, unlocks that make me want to grind, and I'm not talking about RNG. Unlocks should either come from ranking up or completing a specific set of special challenges. And game developers should take time to create items that are specific to certain challenges or ranks, so that as you're progressing through the game and as you're unlocking items and doing challenges, you're rewarded properly. And if the game is dependent on RNG loot, well then you can also probably bet your ass I won't play that game very long either. Number 4, combat variety. Combat variety basically implies that you can play however you want with no hindrance based on how you wanted to play. In most first-person shooters, there's LMGs, assault rifles, SMGs, sniper rifles, shotguns, pistols, rocket launchers, and you should be able to play however you want with those without any hindrance. The way games can do this is by making sure the maps cater to old playstyles and weapons are all balanced. One of the reasons I really do enjoy Call of Duty Ghosts is because I can snipe from across the map in that game, I can get in your face with an SMG, I can melt you with an assault rifle, I can lock down an objective with an LMG, because the maps are catered to however you really want to play. Maybe sometimes they're too big, but, you know, that's subjective. What's not subjective is when there's video games that put you into one role. When Call of Duty Advanced Warfare came out, I was really excited for the amount of combat variety the exosuits would bring, but really the gameplay was just a lot of bouncing and spamming and having to constantly keep on your toes. You couldn't slow down, and that made it kind of an ass to play, to be honest. One role first-person shooters are exhausting, where you can only play quickly or campily. It's really frustrating. So games like Sniper Ghost Warrior, the multiplayer sucked. Because you're having to camp and snipe. Well, sure, that's what that game is for, and you could argue Advanced Warfare is for fast-paced players, but it's not good. It doesn't make it a good design to make sure people can only play one way. So combat variety should always be prominent in every video game. Maps and weapons should cater to it, and we shouldn't have to beg for it. Number 5, atmosphere. Now, atmosphere is a little bit subjective, but it actually affects everybody the same way. It's kind of interesting, because some people don't care, even though it is affecting them. It's a proven fact that colors sounds, music all affect your mood. And since you can't touch, feel, or smell video games, you kind of only have the sounds and the color on your screen. So, when video games like Call of Duty Ghosts come out and their music is depressing, the color scheme is drab, people get bored, people get depressed, people don't want to play that game. Honestly, I think if Call of Duty Ghosts came out with vibrant, saturated colors, badass music, that game would have had an entirely different feel, but there's no way to tell now. Oh well. Just in comparison, go boot up your Black Ops 2 game. Look at the menu, listen to the music, look at the saturated colors, the upbeat tones. That is a menu. That lets you know you're about to get into some hectic combat. Go to Call of Duty Ghosts. It's a gray menu, boring music. Ugh. Just want to fall asleep thinking about it. Also, tying into this is number 6, immersion. And immersion does not come from realism, immersion comes from a consistency of feel. A great example of this is watching Markiplier or Jacksepticeye play with their HTC Vive virtual reality headsets. All the games they're playing on them are pretty much cartoony, oversaturated, not realistic at all, little cartoon games, but they're very immersive. It's immersive because when you move your hands in real life, it consistently moves your hands in the game at the same speed. The consistency of the frame rate, the consistency of the image quality is very, very prominent, and when you're looking at it, you get immersed in it a little bit as well. Call of Duty Advanced Warfare was a good example of a campaign that was very immersive. The frame rate was very consistent, the voice acting, the lighting, the effects, the drama, the story pacing, it was all very consistent. It all felt like it was going on in the same universe. Unlike in Black Ops 3 where it was jumping between different frame rates, between cutscenes, different resolutions, it didn't feel consistent. And you'll start to notice what really feels immersive and what doesn't now that I've mentioned this. And it had to be mentioned to me before I realized it, that immersion comes from how consistent the game is and how much it delivers the same feelings, the same visuals over and over again. Not in the sense of repetitiveness, but immersion comes from the reality around you consistently replicating itself and repeating itself, just like in real life. Real life repeats itself, everything's in patterns, you get it. Now number 7, back into more practical gameplay aspects, map creativity. Map creativity is very, 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 very important to me because map creativity is something that's very lost in Black Ops 3, and I do feel a little bit sad because Call of Duty Ghosts had good map creativity. I even think Advanced Warfare had better map creativity. I know Battlefield games have a lot of creativity in their maps, and this comes from how it's laid out, what you can interact with, and how you play it. Now, when you have only 3-lane maps, it gets a little boring. I think actually the least amount of creativity I've ever seen in map design is Halo 5, but I guess that's supposed to be some sort of esports competitive shooter, so I guess you can give it a little bit of a pass. But either way, maps need to be creative. I need to be able to interact with things, open and close doors, blow open a wall, knock over a crate, go up and down a pointless elevator. You know what I'm talking about. I like creativity in map design, and if it's not there, it's very, very, very noticeable. Alright, so this next one ties in with immersion and atmosphere, and it's gunplay. And I'm not talking about skill gap, you know, and you need to have this much skill to get a kill in Halo or Battlefield. I hate that shit. But when I'm talking about gunplay, I'm talking literally about how the guns play. Now, here's what I'm saying. Picture, if you will, you're playing a first-person shooter, no name, no franchise or whatever, but in the SMG category, you have an Uzi and you have a P90. These are two very different guns. In real life, if you fired both of those guns, they'd feel very different. The recoil would be different, the way you move with them would be different, you'd hold them differently, the recoil would be different, the sound would be different, the rate of fire is different. All of these things need to be addressed when making a first-person shooter. Because a lot of times developers just seem to think, well, this SMG shoots faster, so it'll kick higher, this SMG shoots slower, so it'll kick less, give them different pitch sounds, and the guns end up feeling like clones if you really pay attention. I'm looking at you, Black Ops 2. Black Ops 2 had terrible weapon sounds and terrible design. And I'm not trying to bash on that game, I loved it, but there's something about how every SMG felt exactly the same with varying rates of fire, recoil, and that's about it. The sounds were pretty much all the same, just pitch changed, and it wasn't great. Although you could argue that that adds immersion by making all the guns sound very consistent. If it was for immersion's sake and not because they were lazy, it failed miserably, it looks lazy. So yes, every gun needs to feel different. And speaking of all of these things, combat variety, gunplay, atmosphere, what I look for when I play a first-person shooter And the last two things here, number 9 is no easily abused metagames. Fuck that. What's a metagame, you ask? Counter-Strike Go is the best example I can give. I am not bad at Counter-Strike Go. I'm not bad at any Counter-Strike game. I've been playing Counter-Strike for a long time. Not since it came out, because when it came out, I was 1 year old. That's right, the game's fucking ancient. Counter-Strike hasn't changed in a very long time, and people still play it because of a certain consistent feeling. Or not feeling. Actually, it's a meta. Ugh. Easily abused metas are what ruin first-person shooters for me. An easily abused meta is basically implying that you have to play a certain way. You have to use a certain gun, a certain perk setup, a certain secondary, a certain melee weapon, a certain map point. You have to play a certain way. So, when you go play Counter-Strike, you know what the correct gun to use is, the correct grenade, the correct area on the map to go. And I hate that. I hate that entire concept. You have to aim here, you have to do this, and it's not really coming down to how the player reacts to each individual situation. It comes down to if that tactic works in that situation. Watching CSGO players, like competitive, they're all doing the same thing to each other. They're all doing the exact same move, and it's like a 50-50 each time. There's no creativity, there's no room to breathe. The game is very simple. You can't even prone or aim down your sights. It's so painstakingly simple because you can just easily abuse the meta. So personally, I know a lot of people love that style of game like Halo 2 or Counter-Strike Go, but I hate it. I hate games like that. Actually, one of the reasons I'm not super excited for Call of Duty 4 Remastered is because that game also had an easily abused meta. It had some perks and some weapons that you should use and a lot of stuff that is just kind of useless, and then you just use what works and it becomes boring. It removes combat variety. It breaks immersion. The atmosphere doesn't really even matter anymore. It's all about doing the correct thing to win, and that is a snoozeville fest for me. Hope that doesn't piss all of you guys off that play Counter-Strike or Halo or whatever, but I just personally don't like that style of game. This is what I look for in first-person shooters, not the things everybody should look for. Finally, number 10, solid engine optimization. This is the biggest thing ever. A video game should play well on every console. The Xbox One version of Black Ops 3 should run just as well as the PS4 version, and it should run just as well as the PC version. Every version should run the same, and I know that sounds idealistic. The Xbox One and PS4 are very different in their architecture. The PC is very variable. There's a lot of things going on there. But ideally, the developers of the game will make sure that the game is optimized so nobody feels shafted. Seeing how if you play Black Ops 3, for instance, on a PS4, a PC, or an Xbox One, chances are you paid $60 for any of those. So for one to run consistently worse than the other is not good. So the game being optimized, whether it's removing or adding something to make sure it runs better on that platform, it should happen. It shouldn't be like, oh, well, we can't advertise the game on this console and have it look like this on the other one. No, you can make sure the game runs good on every platform. I don't care what it looks like at this point in my first-person shooter life. I don't care what things look like. I want it to run as smooth as possible. Give me my 60 frames per second and shut up. And of course, netcode. And I don't have to go very far on this one. Basically, when you shoot people, they should die. That should be the highest priority when making an online game. If it's online, the biggest job would be to make sure it runs well online. I love Call of Duty Ghosts and Battlefield games for optimizing their netcode so drastically. I hate Advanced Warfare for having shit hit detection and shit netcode and just feeling laggy and chunky and crumply, and I don't know how many other words I can use to describe how I feel about that game's performance. Either way, I either feel like I was walking through quicksand or I was about 300 billion milliseconds behind everybody else. Part of that was due to some internet lag issues on my end at the time, but even when those internet issues left, I was still left with a game that felt like it was running at about 2 frames per second at sometimes. Gross. Anyway, I hope that wasn't sounding too negative. I'm just saying these are things I look for. I want the game to have customization, progression systems, unlocks that make me want to grind, combat variety, great atmosphere, immersion, map creativity, solid gunplay, no easily abused metas, and solid software attributes, solid engines, solid netcode, and great performance. That is what I look for in first-person shooters. What do you guys look for? What do you guys look for when you buy any type of video game? Hell, what do you look for when you buy a product? Let me know down in the comment section below. If you stayed all the way through the video, let me know down in the comment section below. Leave a like if you haven't already. This took forever to record because I'm a little bit dumb and reading things off a list confuses me. Anyway, I'll see you when I see you. Goodbye!